Good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and we have a lot to get to for a Monday morning, let me tell you that. We're going to hear from some of the viewers who sent us great comments over the weekend. Appreciate that, actually. Let me put up my contact information. If you'd like to reach out and weigh in on any of the topics that we'll be discussing this morning, but I will get to a few of those. We also will hear from our Congressman, Nick Langworthy, who released a statement on the special counsel with Hunter Biden. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here this morning. Thank you to everybody who went out last night and saw the show at Tags. We interviewed Tommy James last week, Friday, as a matter of fact, to promote the concert. So thank you to everybody who came up and said they enjoy the program. I really appreciate that. It's always nice to hear from the viewers. That's why I have my contact information up. So there we go. All right, we're going to start with a story before we take our first break. That's an update from the program last week. So on Friday, we talked about this controversy. I think it was Friday, it might have been Thursday, where Woody Harrelson, who's always been a kind of a well-known liberal activist, actor, he had the audacity to wear a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. hat, and I guess that's enough to get you canceled. You can see that those in the media, those in politics, are very concerned about the traction that RFK Jr. is getting. Starting off with, 20%? Just day one when he announced he attended the Iowa State Fair where the president did not. There's some concern there. So if someone wears a hat in support of RFK Jr., they say, well, he's a conspiracy theory nut. He doesn't believe in vaccination. You saw the pathetic attacks. I'm not even what you would consider a Woody Harrelson fan. I mean, I guess he was okay at Cheers, but not someone that I've ever really been a fan of one way or the other. But boy, just wearing that cap got him in a lot of trouble. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr. weighed in on it. He said, I've texted with him. He's very hard to get a hold of. He's been a friend for many, many years. He's very close to me and Cheryl being RFK Jr.'s wife. One thing is he doesn't like cell phones. Good for him. It's conceivable that he does not know about all of the controversy. He doesn't watch TV. He doesn't have his cell phone, and he's kind of off the grid. So all of this is going on. You got to give credit to Woody Harrelson. All this is going on. Doesn't care. Doesn't affect him one way or the other. Also on Fox News, they asked Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what do you think about Biden not showing up to the Iowa or New Hampshire State Fair? He said, I think it's unfortunate for our country. It's been a tradition. These are the two states that really force candidates, to go through this process of retail politics, to go to the nail salons, to go to the diners, to come to the country fairs. I think that means county fairs, but either way, and actually meet people and understand what's happening with America. There's a temptation for politicians to stay at home, take a bunch of checks from billionaires. Ooh, a couple digs there. Stay at home. We know that that is typically Biden's MO when he's campaigning, to stay in his basement, right? That became a talking point. And then to take checks from billionaires is another dig. And then carpet bomb the country from 30,000 feet with advertisements and not really ever have to understand what's happening to the American people right now. These are the two states where you have to do retail politics, New Hampshire and Iowa. The people here want to shake your hand. They want to look you in the eye. So taking a dig, as I said, they must be concerned because the media, other than some conservative outlets, like the New York Post, for instance, that's where that story came from, or Fox, not giving a lot of coverage to Kennedy, yet he's still doing very well. Kind of fascinating to watch. So we've got a lot more to talk about. I just thought that was kind of interesting and an update from Friday. As I said, we will be talking about all the issues of the day. I have a New York State issue I'm going to get to next. So please weigh in. But right now we have, by the way, we get to spend the whole morning together. you and I did not book a guest because we have so much to catch up on. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. That break was a little short, so you got to see a little bit more of the behind-the-scenes actions in the studio. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. There's a new study out, and it's going to tie in with two different stories in New York. This shows which counties throughout the country, are home to the most excessive drinkers. So I looked into it, and they had it by county in New York, and I wanted to look at what the average was for our area. But before I give you those numbers, excessive drinking, by definition, encompasses both binge drinking, which is 4 or more drinks on one occasion for women, 5 or more for men, and heavy drinking, which is considered 8 or more drinks a week for women, 15 or more for men. So in Western New York, 21% for those in Erie County, 22% in Niagara, 23% in Genesee County. Well, I looked up both Chemung and Steuben at 22%. Consider themselves, or at least the study considers them, extensive or excessive drinkers. Now I tied in with a topic that we discuss very frequently, and I mentioned it on the program on Friday. We got a lot of good response back and forth. But the disastrous rollout of legalized marijuana, and I said on the program that maybe I wouldn't bring up this topic so much because the polling suggests that a lot of people out there are smoking marijuana. I don't want to lose viewers who get mad at me. But this is a study, or not study, article from the New York Post. Basically, they interviewed cannabis advocates to get their opinion on the legalized marijuana rollout here in New York State. So the Coalition for Access to Regulated and Safe Cannabis gave the State Office of Cannabis Management the failing grades of 3 Fs, 1 D, a D+, and a C-. It's really 4 Fs, though, because they ended up giving a kind of a sarcastic A for the state allowing, inadvertently, but still allowing, huge illicit market of unlicensed cannabis shops, the ones we've talked so much about, the sticker stores. This is from, again, the Coalition of Access to Regulated and Safe Cannabis. They said, despite its enormous potential, New York's adult use cannabis market right now is failing by almost every measure on access, on equity. And equity has been such a big, at least talking point in this rollout. And that's why we've had that veterans group sue to be allowed to participate in the legal distribution of marijuana, and on economic viability. This is solely the fault of Governor Hochul's Office of Cannabis Management. We know that, I'm never a fan of bureaucracy, but we know that they are understaffed. Some have put in the city alone 4,000 illegal sticker stores. And I can't remember how many people they said work for OCM, but it's minuscule compared to what kind of enforcement they would need. But I'll continue. This has led to the illicit market and let it thrive while shutting the door on vetted social equity applicants, including minority and women business owners, veterans, and the registered organizations that have been serving the state's medical cannabis patients for almost a decade. So they give it, you know what? I don't want to run too late. I'm going to give you their grades, just give you a quick look, then we'll get off this topic. We've got a lot to talk about with Hunter, a lot to talk about with former President Donald Trump. We'll get to all of those in just a little bit. But again, I don't want to run too late. But as always, contact me. I want to hear your take. What do you think about the rollout of marijuana here in New York State? We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Thank you so much for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I feel like this show is going too quickly already, but I do want to get back to this topic, which is the legal marijuana rollout here in New York. And the Coalition for access to regulated and safe cannabis, their ratings on how it's all been really unfolding, if you will. So I'm going to put the article up just real quick, coming from the New York Post. So they give an F in administrative licensing. Only 21 adult use retail dispensaries have opened nearly 2.5 years since marijuana was legalized here in New York State. Then it was Governor Cuomo at the time that passed that. There's a backlog, of 463 cannabis licensed operators that have yet to open. Even if the state doubled its pace and helping to get them up and running, it would still take 5 years for all operators to open their weed dispensaries at this rate. That's according to the report card. We're going to go through this kind of fast because I didn't mean to spend this much time on it. But they get an F for raising revenue. Halfway through 2023, the state is only on pace to generate $48 million in new tax revenue. That means New York, with a population of 19.8 million, is barely set to eclipse Montana, which has 1.1 million residents and generated $42 million last year. They also gave them an F for constitutional law. A judge has issued a temporary restraining order blocking the state from issuing any more cannabis licenses. We talked about this last week because that veterans organization sued, saying this is ridiculous. In the name of equity, we're getting blocked out. Current medical marijuana companies also were excluded from the first round of licenses, which offer cannabis to all customers, not just patients. Okay, continuing. They give the Office of Cannabis Management an A for the illicit market. Now, obviously, this was a sarcastic or kind of tongue-in-cheek, if you will. With the New York City Sheriff's Office estimating over 2,000 illicit shops, and again, I've seen reported up to perhaps 4,000 in New York City alone, there appears no stopping this booming market, the report card said. Further, even though the state passed a new law in March that would fine these shops up to $10,000 per day, players in the industry are doubtful taxes could get collected from those mostly cash-only shops. Finally, D for medical cannabis. Though New York was once home to one of the most successful medical cannabis programs in the country, revenue from its medical cannabis sales have plummeted 30% from a year ago. And the last two, D plus for societal equity. The state is leaving out countless black and brown entrepreneurs without drug convictions and women seeking a foothold in the booming industry, making their program inherently inequitable. And the last one, C minus for law enforcement. The report card calls the state's crackdown on illicit cannabis operators belated, meager, and futile. So even though I said on Friday we probably wouldn't talk about this topic anymore, there you go. We just talked about it for a pretty good portion of the program so far. I would love to hear your opinion on it. And I wanted to mention, because we get so many great comments from viewers. Like this one, I just wanted to mention this. I got this on Friday. I can't thank you enough for your show. Have a great weekend. Oh, that was nice. Thank you for watching. Thank you to everybody who watches the program. I very much appreciate it. This is another text that I received. Again, this was over the weekend. Let's go to it here. Okay, I'm going to have to give me 10 seconds because that's okay. I've been thinking a lot about the rumors I'm hearing and stories of how many illegal migrants are now in New York City and therefore being sent to counties throughout the state. And yet I hear nothing from our mayor or others. But I will admit, I no longer subscribe to the lopsided local media much and prefer to seek other sources. Well, thank you for seeking us out. I appreciate that. The last I heard was Corning would reevaluate the situation, and that was several months ago. I realize this is nothing new. I've noticed unmarked buses throughout the southern tier for approximately 5 years. This should be concerning to everyone because the burden is just too much to bear for most working poor or those on fixed incomes. And we aren't haters, but this is not sustainable. And they are breaking the law, bottom line. If you have a slow news day, we never have a slow news day here, or insight you can share may ease some concerns. As always, many thanks. This is exactly the kind of emails I love to receive. I don't have what I would say is an opinion on that. I know it has been very quiet. Steuben County was very quiet on the issue, not taking a stance like Chemung County did. But then, of course, Chemung County was a part of that lawsuit because what they essentially said is hotels could not accept migrants. And then there's a lawsuit, and you know all about it. We talked about it extensively. I do believe it would be a major burden on our area, no matter what part of our area you are watching this program from. I don't know if anything has been updated on that. I don't know if we have received migrants from New York City or from elsewhere. As far as I'm aware, our area has not, but if you know differently, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your take on it in general, and that's why I love emails like this, because it can open the discussion. So what are your thoughts? It would be, to me, in my mind, a very big financial burden for our area. You know, if New York City can't handle it with all of their resources, how can a Chemung County? How can a Steuben County? Or think about the towns. How could a Big Flats or an Addison or wherever? How could they handle without the resources of a New York City? But New York City obviously is being crippled by this in many ways. So please weigh in. I'm going to put that contact information up again real quickly before we take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the presidential race. We're going to talk about former President Trump, the discussions about Hunter Biden. We're going to hear what our Congressman Nick Langworthy had to say over the weekend about Hunter Biden. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I am your host, Frank Akam. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning on the program. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on beautiful Market Street in Corning, New York. This is I'm not going to say I'm confused by this, but this is an article we see quite frequently. Democrats are eyeing the abortion issue as the winning ticket for 2024. Now, Governor Hochul went that direction as well in the last election, where Lee Zeldin went for public safety. Even though Lee Zeldin ultimately lost, I think his decision proved to be the smarter decision of the two, and that's why now we have reports that Governor Hochul is going to attempt to, I guess, change her reputation and make it look like, and I don't think we'll actually see anything accomplished, but look like she's concerned about public safety. Not because she's actually concerned about your safety, as we talked about with former Congressman Joe Sempolinski last week. She's not actually concerned about your safety or the residents of New York safety. She's just upset that it ultimately cost the Democrats the House majority because they did not focus on it. But anyway, this coming from the Daily News out of New York City. After an unlikely landslide win last week in Ohio, pro-choice activists believe they have a huge advantage with voters in the coming year, particularly in suburban swing areas. And Democrats are planning to run strongly on the issue in 2024 and beyond, in hopes it can help them retake control of Congress and keep the White House. Miles Coleman, a political analyst, said abortion is going to be just as big an issue in 2024, if not bigger. Every time it gets on the ballot, the pro-choice side wins. It's not clear what would change that dynamic. So keep that in mind as we get near election season. Obviously, this year there is an election season, but it's all local. But I'm talking about presidential, congressional next year. That could very well be the major topic in political debates, political elections. The abortion issue is spreading to swing states and even deep blue states like New York, as pro-choice majorities push back against GOP proposals for nationwide restrictions. Ben Rhodes, you may remember him, he's a former advisor to President Barack Obama, said this is an issue that has turbocharged the entire electorate. The antenna is up among American voters. They don't like Republicans taking away abortion rights. So that will be most likely a major issue that will divide Democrats and Republicans as we have presidential races, as we see congressional races. So many will be focused on that. Again, I don't think it was successful for, well, I can't say it wasn't successful for Governor Hochul. I mean, she ultimately won, but I don't think that was beneficial to her, focusing on that issue over public safety. But that's just New York. This is talking about nationwide, so we'll see how that goes. Now, we're going to talk about Hunter Biden. How am I doing? Oh, good. We're doing good on time. So Merrick Garland appointed a special prosecutor in the Hunter Biden case. According to W. James Antle III, it's too little, too late. This is coming from CNN. For Republican voters, there's a powerful split that drives how they view the 2024 presidential race. And on no day was it presented in a sharper definition than on July 27th, when Hunter Biden's plea agreement fell apart. That Attorney General Merrick Garland on Friday elevated the prosecutor behind the deal, David Wise, to the position of special prosecutor, with a trial likely in the wake of an aborted plea deal, does little to help the GOP concerns. No, I mean, and we're going to hear from Congressman Nick Langworthy here in just a moment, but this is so frustrating. You know, if you want to do a special prosecutor, that's great. That's a step in the right direction. But not the guy who bungled the whole deal in the first place, which is David Wise. The Justice Department appointing a special counsel now is too little, too late. One should have been appointed long ago. Now it feels too much like a cleanup attempt. I think that's a good point. It makes it look even shadier, doesn't it? House Republicans in particular won't have confidence in Wise, especially given the events around the plea deal, and will prefer their own investigation. Yeah, I mean, the plea deal, that's one of the issues. And again, I know we talked about it quite extensively last week, but when you see the constant indictments against former President Trump, some of them, I think, some of the charges questionable. You look at those, what I mean questionable, you know, a little bit far-reaching, right? You see that aggressiveness against the former president, and you see what was I hate using this term because it's so cliche, but what was a sweetheart deal for Hunter Biden. And the fact that his lawyer, I mean, that's how, I don't know, arrogant they are, that they had that great deal and they wanted more. And they weren't happy with it. And they thought they'd get away with it. And they probably ultimately will, unfortunately, because of the corruption. But especially now that you have Wise on the case, even more, probably they were smart not to accept that plea deal. But remember, they said, no, well, fine. We're not taking it then. What a mistake. But Hunter Biden is one reason Trump is able to survive, even thrive, under circumstances that would have felled almost any other candidate. Rank and file Republicans see the president's son as a prime illustration of a double standard. And yeah, the timing of that, it is. It's a perfect example, a perfect picture into the two-tiered, as so many people are saying, justice system, to that double standard. They think Trump is getting a raw deal and has been the target of an obsessive campaign to bring him down. Well, really, since he was elected, right? You know, going back to Russia. We'll continue. The Republican base thinks the criminal charges against Trump are politically motivated, that he has been treated differently than not only Hunter, but also President Joe Biden and his 2016 rival Hillary Clinton. That's very clear. I mean, you look at, just for instance, the classified documents. We know that Biden had classified documents. When's the last time you heard about that? I know there was a story on Friday that they were demanding answers from Biden, but what's really going to come out of that? Perhaps the most damning evidence is a report by esteemed former public prosecutor John Durham, another DOJ special counsel, who looked into the FBI's investigation of Trump over accusations he had colluded with the Russians. Durham conducted a nearly 4-year review of the Russian probe and concluded that the same Justice Department that has been accused of going easy on Hunter Biden had a weak basis for its investigation into Trump on Russia collusion, even as it didn't get as worked up about claims of foreign election interference when they concerned Hillary Clinton. Right. It was definitely focused on Trump. No sense looking into a Hillary Clinton. No sense really going after Hunter. Based on the evidence gathered in the multiple, exhaustive, and costly federal investigations of these matters, Durham said, neither U.S. law enforcement nor the intelligence community appears to have possessed any actual evidence of collusion in their holdings at the commencement of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. The FBI responded to the report by stating they had implemented dozens of corrective actions. And you remember at the time when that came out, I mean, it was really a smoking gun, another cliche term. It was very much proof of what we already knew, this bias, and the media chose not to cover. I'm shocked that this is coming from CNN, if I'm being honest. Many people that would watch CNN may not even know that Durham ever made that statement. At the same time that the DOJ and the mainstream media were overturning every pebble as part of this investigation, powerful players dismissed evidence found on Hunter Biden's laptop, raising questions about his business activities. In the heat of the 2020 presidential campaign, former intelligence officials, many appointed by Democrats, opined that the laptop was the result of Russian disinformation. You remember that? And the media is very good at that. If you say it's Russian disinformation or that it was hacked, then they don't have to bring up the report any longer. They don't have to bring up the story, the laptop story. They were nearly successful at that. We talked about it at the time, but when the plea deal was coming forth and we were seeing the trial itself, it was really interesting because many of the outlets that were forced to report on it had to give so much background information because to their viewers and their listeners, they had never reported on it. Or if they had, it was to criticize Republicans on it. That, again, it was hacked, it was Russian disinformation. I know that Jake Tapper said, we are going to report on Hunter. But if you look originally, he would not bring up the laptop story saying it was a conspiracy from Republicans. But anyway, it made news outlets hesitant to cover it. Yeah, it's not because it was questionable, the laptop. It's because they didn't want to see anything that could be critical of Biden or his family. And social media companies restrict sharing the stories that did get published. Not restrict, censor. Restrict is not the right word. It was a complete censorship campaign. And I know Biden, I think it was on Friday, Biden's administration got in trouble for this censorship campaign, this stifling of free speech that, let's face it, they've been very effective at. So you have right in the middle of an election, the laptop story was censored by social media because it would hurt Biden. Even once that was disproven and the DOJ investigation of Hunter Biden heated up, meaning that it was disproven that it was Russian disinformation, the IRS whistleblower testified that they were blocked from interviews that would normally conduct and rebuffed in recommendations for further charges. Joseph Ziegler, a career IRS official who identifies as a Democrat, mind you, testified that prosecutors slow-walked the investigation and put in place unnecessary approvals and roadblocks from effectively addressing the case. A lot of times we were not able to follow the facts, he said. But the voters who will decide, this again coming from CNN, the next GOP presidential nominee, are not wrong in thinking that something about Hunter Biden's treatment doesn't sit right. And, you know, I've talked about this so many times, but and I think he said it again on Thursday's program, former Congressman Joe Zemblinsky said that, you know, people may not like Trump. There may be somebody out there that really dislikes Trump, but boy, they hate this idea of a deep state and a censorship campaign even more. They don't like being told who they can and cannot pick for president. They don't like being told that you can't vote for Trump because we're going to build up all these trumped up charges. But I'll continue. It's not surprising this is then channeling into suspicion of the legal cases against Trump and suspicion of Wise as a special prosecutor role. As McCarthy tweeted Friday, if Wise negotiated the sweetheart deal that couldn't get approved, how can he be trusted as a special counsel? House Republicans will continue to pursue the facts for the American people. Republican voters believe that Hunter Biden is set to get off with a slap on the wrist while their favored candidate is the one being hunted. Wise's appointment will only feed that anger. I'm going to talk about what our Congressman Nick Langworthy had to say here in just a little bit. A little more on this when we come back, but I was actually very impressed. I'm surprised that they put that on CNN. That coming from W. James Antle III in the opinion section of CNN. So let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. So we're talking about the special counsel and the pick of Wise. Jonathan Turley, that law professor writing for Fox News, says that Biden's special counsel pick reveals that Attorney General Merrick Garland, is joining media in circling the wagons to defend the president and his family. Yeah, I mean, the media has even gone as far as saying we can't talk about this because Hunter is an addict and that Joe Biden loves his son very much. So they have then the right not to report on what is a very real scandal. But the appointment of David Wise as special counsel in the Hunter Biden investigation, has caused an outcry of objections, including from some of us who have called for such an appointment for years. Not only did Attorney General Merrick Garland not select someone from outside the Justice Department, as required, by the way, under the statute, but selected a prosecutor who has been accused by whistleblowers of running a fixed investigation. Yeah, all this does is when you appoint Wise, it shows us all that the fix is in. Yet the most glaring problem was the failure of Garland to expand the mandate of the investigation to including the growing corruption scandal involving President Biden. There appears no evidence that Garland will accept as warranting an investigation into corruption allegations involving now $20 million in transfers from a variety of foreign interests, including some with ties to foreign intelligence. A lot of red flags there. For its part, the media is adopting the same position of willful blindness. Indeed, it now has a new demand before it will fully recognize or realize or even report on the scandal. They want to see Joe Biden actually accepting money. Like Garland, they will not independently investigate and will not take growing evidence of an elaborate system of accounts used to hide these payments. Yes, they have a very easy position, which is we don't have to report on it. We don't like the story. So we have to see, really, when it's a smoking gun, it's next level smoking gun. They need to see someone pulling the trigger, essentially. They need to see Joe Biden accepting money almost in cash in hand. So this is a really good piece. We don't have time to get to all of it because it's quite lengthy. But if you want to find out more, it's at Fox News, Jonathan Turley. And it's called, is this? Nope, I thought I had it here. I put it up on the screen. But Biden's special counsel pick reveals A.G. Garland joining media in circling wagons to defend the president and his family. Now, again, I know I keep saying this, but we're going to hear from what from our congressman and what he had to say on this, but also what I found kind of interesting, which is what Chuck Todd had to say over the weekend on the Hunter Biden investigation. So stay with us. A lot more to cover. I know this show's going quickly this morning, especially for a Monday. We're firing on all cylinders, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. A little more bonus behind-the-scenes action. I know that break came up a little short, so you got to watch me get all my paperwork in order. So Chuck Todd, over the weekend, said, quote, President Biden's handling of the case, meaning the Hunter Biden case, the plea deal, etc., has raised questions at a time when voters already have doubts about his age and political standing. I've got to wonder why Chuck Todd would be bringing this up. When you hear this, what do you think of when you see someone like Chuck Todd criticize the president about his age, his standing, this Hunter Biden case? It makes me wonder if the media is not going to start to turn against him in hopes of a Gavin Newsom taking his place or whoever. Last week we had a story that suggested Michelle Obama. And there's many names that have been mentioned. But it does seem like this is out of the ordinary and something to maybe keep an eye on, because that's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not typical of the mainstream media to go after Biden this way. But I'll continue. Biden brought his son to a state dinner just 2 days after the plea deal that has since collapsed. And he has repeatedly defended him, denying wrongdoing altogether, even though Hunter Biden himself has pled guilty. NBC political analyst Brendan Buck also suggested that the White House needs to take the scandal around the president's son, quote, more seriously. Why? I mean, the media hasn't been questioning it. The media has been defending the plea deal and the DOJ's involvement in this case. Quote, yeah, I mean, it's basic politics. trying to turn your opponent's strength into a weakness. And one of the things that I think Joe Biden was elected to do was to clear out the mess in the White House, bring ethics and decency back. And this is clearly an effort to do that. Now, I think the White House and the president's reelection needs to take this a bit more seriously than what they're doing right now. Did we ever think, I mean, maybe that's why people voted for him, but do you think that from day one that Biden was actually bringing ethics and decency back to the White House? I mean, just out of curiosity, you can weigh in on that. It was very easy for a long time for Democrats to just say, well, that's stuff on the crazy right. And now it's going to be on trial. It's going to be in front page news everywhere. Well, it should have been from the beginning. Instead of being censored by essentially Biden calling the social media outlets and saying, censor this story, the media should have been covering this from day one. But now, and again, that's their excuse. Well, it was covered by right wing. Doesn't that show you how corrupt the media is? How am I doing on time? Okay. Anyway, I don't think it will be front page news everywhere either. I disagree. I think the media is going to try to cover this up as much as possible, unless they do really think they can get Biden out for a younger candidate, not a Harris. So they're not going to want Harris. So it'll have to be like a Gavin Newsom. That'll be interesting to see. I think they can appreciate that this could damage him pretty seriously. Interesting. All right. Lindsey Graham over the weekend also called it a dumb political decision. This was a political decision, meaning putting lies in there, not a legal decision. They're trying to put out a fire, and they just poured gasoline on it. Nobody in their right mind believes that making him a special counsel, Mr. Wise, cleans up the mess that has been created. If it weren't for the House of Representatives, we wouldn't know any of this. This was a dumb political decision to try to solve a legal problem that they've created themselves. Nobody in America is going to buy that he becomes special counsel. All is well. Okay, that's Lindsey Graham. Again, I know I keep saying it, but we'll hear from what our congressman, what our congressman had to say about this issue when we come back. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox back after this short commercial break. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. I am your host, Frank Acom, and today we did not have an M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program, but we always thank M.A. Neal Financial Services for sponsoring our interviews. And we will have an interview each day this week, though I do want to highlight we won't on Wednesday, so I say each day this week, but not Wednesday. Wednesday, we will have a live, Frankly Speaking, but it will be delayed due to Women's World Cup action, which we have no problem with the delay because there have been some amazing matches. So that is the last time we will be preempted for that, but it is on Wednesday. I will remind you tomorrow, but we'll go on probably around 8:15, so just a little bit different in your schedule. So I appreciate you being understanding of that and also moving your schedule around. So Representative Jamie Raskins, he's the Democrat from Maryland, and he's a ranking member on the oversight panel. He argued politicians should let the justice system run its course, conceding that Hunter Biden did wrong things. It does seem clear that this guy was addicted to drugs and did a lot of really unlawful and wrong things. This is why we have a Justice Department. Let's just let them do their jobs. Well, will they do their jobs? I think that's the point. And with the collapse of the plea agreement that he had apparently worked out with Hunter Biden, now he wants to be certain that he's got the authority to go bring charges wherever he wants. After a judge tore into the initial plea deal, as we know, Hunter Biden ultimately pleaded not guilty. Fellow oversight colleague, Representative Dan Goldman, a New York Democrat, steered clear of bashing Hunter Biden outright, but acknowledged allegations from Hunter's longtime business partner, Devon Archer. I think the same witness also made very clear that they never discussed business and that Hunter Biden was trying to promote an illusion of access to his father for his own reasons. That's Hunter Biden. And you can make it whatever judgment you want. You can make whatever judgment you want to make about whether that was appropriate or not. If Hunter Biden has committed crimes, he should be charged with them. I'm a Democrat saying that, said Goldman. You can't hear any currently elected Republicans saying that if Donald Trump committed crimes, he should be charged. That's a critical distinction that the public needs to understand. It's a weird way of handling that. Okay, but that's his argument. But Hunter having done really unlawful and wrong things. Another short break. Then we are going to wrap up our discussion here on Frankly Speaking. So please stay with us. We will be right back. We are back with Frankly Speaking. We just got our first wave of the morning, and that was by none other than Corning Mayor Bill Bolin. Just went out of his way to wave. Good to see him. We'll have to have him on the program again shortly. He was our first guest ever on the televised version of Frankly Speaking. Again, this is Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. As promised, pretty much all morning, here's what Congressman Nick Langworthy had to say about David Wise being appointed to the special counsel. Attorney General Garland's decision is a clear attempt to cover up mounting evidence from the House Oversight Committee, exposing President Biden's involvement in his family's pay-for-play schemes with foreign nationals. The department's misconduct already allowed the clock to run out on serious crimes committed by Hunter Biden, while officials ignored incriminating leads and negotiated a lenient plea deal. Lenient is a kind word. This move underscores the Biden Justice Department's bid to obstruct congressional oversight of the president's corruption and compromised leadership. The Oversight Committee will not be stopped in its investigation and pursuit of the facts for the American people. So thank you to Congressman Nick Langworthy. He released that statement on Friday. I want to make sure that you had an opportunity to see it. I had not seen it reported elsewhere. We don't really have time for anything else. I know that Representative Greg Stube has filed articles of impeachment against Joe Biden for what he calls high crimes. He has undermined the integrity of his office, brought disrepute on the presidency, betrayed his trust as president, and acted in a manner subversive of the rule of law and justice at the expense of America's citizens. The evidence continues to mount by the day. The Biden crime family has personally profited off of Joe's government positions through bribery, threats, and fraud. Joe Biden must not be allowed to continue to sit in the White House selling out our country. It's long past time to impeach Joe Biden. So that's coming from Representative Stube, Greg Stube from Florida. According to CNN, Trump seized the spotlight at the Iowa State Fair, getting big numbers, record turnout, being surrounded by a lot of, I guess you would say, Trump endorsers, not DeSantis fans, tried to take away some of DeSantis's, I don't even know if you can say momentum, but DeSantis was there. Atlanta is bracing for chaos as the fourth Trump indictment nears. Now we say that, bracing for chaos. And when these indictments come down, there's going to be so much trouble. And we've got to have extra security and blocks. And nothing ever comes from it. I mean, there's still a little crowd, but, they always hype it up to compare it to January 6th, something like that. Yeah, we're out of time. I can't keep reading more and more articles because we were out of time about 30 seconds ago. Thank you to everybody who joined us this morning. Thank you to everybody who contacted us either today or throughout the weekend. Really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, have a great day, everyone.